Welcome to This Explainer. Today, we are diving deep into the staggering financial realities and the incredibly high-stakes gambles behind owning a modern global airport. Have you ever walked through a terminal and just wondered how much money is flowing around you? Well, we're about to unpack the hidden economics of this fascinating industry.
To really wrap our heads around the immense scale we're talking about, look no further than the consortium that bought Sydney Airport for a staggering 32 billion Australian dollars. I mean, just think about that number for a second. 32 billion! You see, for most of modern history, airports were strictly public infrastructure, entirely paid for by taxpayers. But the moment governments and private investors realized the goldmine these properties actually represented, the rush to privatize began.
It sounds like the ultimate capitalist dream, doesn't it? In fact, people in the industry often call it the closest thing the modern world has to a legal money printing press. Think about it. You own the only runway in town. You face literally zero competition because no one is building a second international airport right next door. And you get to collect fees from every single airline and passenger that comes through. You just sit back and watch the billions roll in.
But is it really that simple? Well, the reality is that it's an absolute financial minefield. As you'll see today, right beneath that monopoly status lies a brutal environment where a single glitch can trigger a multi-billion-dollar disaster. We're talking about a business where the smartest infrastructure investors on Earth have lost spectacular fortunes on projects that logically should have been a slam dunk.
Let's start with Section 1, the multi-billion-dollar buy-in. So this whole privatization trend really took off back in the 1980s. Now, if you're looking at major U.S. hubs like JFK or LAX, they still remain publicly funded through tax-exempt government bonds. But the rest of the world? It looks very, very different. Today, over 75% of passenger traffic in Europe and Latin America flows through privately managed terminals. Private money is absolutely flooding the gates.
But getting a seat at this table requires just an unfathomable amount of cash. If you want to build from scratch, you need between 50 and 140 square kilometers of perfectly flat, legally cleared land. To put that into perspective, Denver International Airport is literally larger than the entire city of San Francisco. And then you have to build the runway. It's not just pouring some asphalt, it's a multi-layered engineering marvel. A single major runway routinely costs over $1 billion. When London's Heathrow proposed a third runway, the estimated price tag ballooned to an eye-watering $13 to $18 billion, and that is literally just for one strip of concrete.
Which brings us to Section 2, the nightmare of delays.
Because look, even if you can somehow afford all the raw materials, the real killer of airport projects isn't just the concrete or the steel. It's time. When you borrow billions of dollars, you start paying massive interest the exact day that loan arrives, not the day the planes start flying. Every single month of delay burns millions in pure interest while bringing in zero revenue. Take the Berlin-Brandenburg Airport. It was supposed to open in 2011 with a €2 billion budget, but thanks to a catastrophic design flaw in their automated fire safety system, the opening was delayed by 9 years. The final cost jumped to a staggering €7 billion.
And Berlin is definitely not alone here. Back in the 90s, Denver International sat completely empty for 16 long months, simply because an automated baggage system kept destroying luggage during the testing phase. That single technological glitch ended up costing the city an estimated $1.1 million every single day the airport sat empty. So the takeaway here is that in this business, time literally is money, and mistakes are punished ruthlessly.
Moving right along to Section 3, the secret business inside the terminal.
Okay, so if buying in is so expensive and risky, how do these massive assets actually make their billions once the doors finally open? Well, the revenue is strictly divided into two streams. On one side, making up 63%, is aeronautical revenue. These are things like landing fees for the airlines and per-passenger security fees. But here's the catch. Because airports are monopolies, governments heavily regulate and cap those aeronautical fees. So what did the smart owners do? They built a second, entirely unregulated gold mine right inside the first one. That's your non-aeronautical revenue, which makes up roughly 37% of global income.
See, while regulators cap how much an airport can charge an airline to land a jet, they have absolutely zero control over the land surrounding the terminal. Airports have a total unrestricted monopoly on parking, and this allows a hub like Dallas-Fort Worth to generate a massive $251 million in a single fiscal year just from parking alone. No regulator can step in to stop them from charging whatever the market will bear for a parking spot.
But the monetization gets even more fascinating and, honestly, a little secretive once you actually step inside the building. The entire terminal space is mathematically engineered to make you spend. Step 1, right after you get through the stress of security, you enter what's called the recomposer zone. They use softer lighting and wider walkways to lower your stress. Why? Because relaxed people spend more money. Step 2, many major hubs then force you to walk directly through a winding duty-free maze just to reach your gate. This forced walk-through layout actually increases retail sales by up to 60%.
And step 3 takes this psychology even further. Have you ever noticed how the walkways in these duty-free mazes almost always deliberately curve gently to the left? This totally exploits human psychology. Since most of us are right-handed, we naturally tend to look to our right when we're walking. So, the designers place all the high-margin luxury items right there on the right side, directly in your natural line of sight. It is a completely invisible, brilliant retail engine.
Now let's look at what happens when it all goes wrong in Section 4, the ghost airport trap.
You see, all of that brilliant retail engineering completely collapses if the terminal is empty. In the airport business, size is absolutely everything. This brings us to what's known as the volume trap. Airports face crushing fixed costs. Whether 10 million people fly today or literally 0 people fly, the lights have to stay on, security has to be staffed 24/7, and those massive runways have to be maintained. Because of these fixed costs, any hub handling fewer than 1 million passengers a year almost inevitably loses money. The expenses just swallow the revenue whole.
And this brutal dynamic has created some of the most embarrassing financial disasters in the industry. We're talking megastructures built on political ego instead of actual data. Take Spain's Ciudad Real Central Airport. They built it in 2008 for over €1 billion, complete with a massive 4-kilometer runway designed to handle 10 million passengers. The problem? It was built 200 kilometers from Madrid, and Airline simply refused to fly there. It went totally bankrupt in just 4 years and was eventually auctioned off for a mere €10,000. $1 billion asset sold for the price of a cheap used car.
Or check out Sri Lanka's Matala Rajapaksa International Airport. They spent $200 million on it, and today it handles maybe a dozen passengers a day. The volume is so non-existent that the government literally had to resort to renting out the pristine, empty airport lounges just to store bags of rice. It's a pretty stark reminder that without the massive volume to feed the machine, an airport is really just an incredibly expensive, empty building.
Finally, let's wrap things up with Section 5. The ultimate profit machine.
Because here is the flip side. If an airport actually avoids that ghost trap and conquers the volume game, it transforms into an almost unbeatable financial fortress. The returns are just breathtaking. Think about standard industries, where a 10% operating profit margin is considered really healthy. Well, mega hub managers, like Spain's Aviation Group, which manages dozens of high-volume hubs, report an unbelievable 60% operating profit margin. They are easily among the most profitable infrastructure assets on the entire planet. And the smartest owners out there, they are already future-proofing their monopolies to make them even more lucrative. They aren't just running terminals anymore, they're building aerotropolises. Basically entire commercial cities centered around the airport, which generates massive real estate income that is completely insulated from daily passenger volumes. Inside the terminal, they're deploying biometric face scanners to completely eliminate security lines. Why? Because the less time you spend waiting in line, the more time you have to spend on the retail floor, driving up that average spend per passenger.
So, as we conclude this explainer on the hidden economics of global airports, ask yourself this question the next time you find yourself being ushered through that winding, left-curving duty-free maze. Are you just a traveler trying to catch a flight, or are you a carefully managed data point in a 60% profit machine? Thank you so much for exploring with us today, and definitely keep your eyes open the next time you head to the gate.